Republicans in the Senate have killed a resolution that would have put limits on President Trump's ability to take action in Venezuela. 5 Republicans had broken rank last week to advance a war powers measure, many concerned about the possibility President Trump would order troops on the ground in Venezuela. One of those senators, Missouri's Josh Hawley, spoke before the vote about what changed his mind.
I've had multiple very substantive discussions on this issue over the last 5 days. And, what the administration told me all the time was, they said, we think that this ties our hands. And I said, my concern is ground troops in Venezuela without congressional authorization. And they said, well, we don't want to do that.
A lot of thought behind considering ICE's actions in other cities, including hers in the Chicago area. So she says she has 70 co-sponsors for this measure, that this is really about accountability on the part of Secretary Noem, that she needs to leave office and leave her post. The Department of Homeland Security, for its part, though, said that, look, the Secretary and the Department is simply trying to do its job here. The DHS is a law enforcement agency enforcing the rule of law passed by Congress. So obviously, with Republicans in the majority.
The Senate didn't just send a message. They delivered a blow so sharp and so unexpected that it rattled the entire political world. For the first time in Trump's second term, a bipartisan majority openly pushed back and said, "You don't get unchecked power here." And the moment it happened, you could almost feel Washington freeze, because nobody expected this many cracks inside the president's own party. Nobody thought Republicans would defy him on something as serious and high stakes as war powers. And absolutely nobody expected the fallout that came next: a public meltdown, an emergency pressure campaign, and a final vote that came within one heartbeat of shutting down Trump's Venezuela operation entirely. Here's how everything unfolded, moment by moment, and why experts say this could be the beginning of the most dangerous political shift Trump has faced since returning to the White House. It started quietly enough, with a procedural vote that most people assumed would go nowhere. But then something wild happened. A bipartisan majority formed on the Senate floor, and 5 Republicans walked right across the aisle to join Democrats in advancing a war powers resolution aimed directly at limiting Donald Trump's authority to expand military action in Venezuela without Congress signing off. The final tally, 52-47, 52. That's not a fluke. That's not symbolic. That's a majority. And the Republicans who broke ranks weren't fringe members of the party. They were major, recognizable, influential figures. Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Josh Hawley, and Todd Young. Senators who have stood with Trump before. Senators who understand the risk of defying a president known for punishing even the slightest disloyalty. And yet, they voted against him anyway. That was the moment everything shifted, because that vote didn't just advance a resolution. It exposed something Trump has always feared: the first real signs that his own party is willing to break from him. And once a crack opens, it never stays small. But the reaction from Trump made the situation even more explosive. He didn't stay quiet. He didn't call for unity. He didn't even try to reassure the public that everything was under control. Instead, he erupted publicly, blasting the 5 Republicans on social media, calling them disgraceful, insisting they should never hold office again, and claiming their vote put America in danger. That wasn't strategy. That wasn't leadership. That was panic. Raw, unfiltered, unmistakable panic. Because Trump understood exactly what that vote meant. If 5 Republicans could defect now, more might follow later. And if more follow later, his entire second-term agenda is in jeopardy. But the story didn't stop with the blow-up. Behind the scenes, what happened next was even more intense. According to multiple reports, advisors inside the White House rushed into emergency mode. They began placing calls, dozens of them, to senators, donors, lobbyists, anyone who might have influence. Rumors suggest some of these conversations were blunt, even harsh. Words like primary challenge, party loyalty, and future support were allegedly thrown around. There were promises, there were warnings, and the pressure zeroed in on 2 senators in particular, Hawley and Young. Why them? Because Paul, Collins, and Murkowski have a long history of voting independently. They're not easily pressured. But Hawley and Young? Different story. They're ambitious. They're strategic. They're deeply connected to Republican voters who still support Trump. And that made them vulnerable. So while Trump raged publicly, his team worked privately to peel back just enough votes to kill the resolution when it reached the final stage. And incredibly, their pressure campaign worked, but only barely. When the final vote came, Hawley flipped, Young flipped, and suddenly, the Senate stood locked at a perfect 50-50 split, every Democrat on one side, every loyal Republican on the other, with only 3 GOP senators refusing to switch. That deadlock brought one person into the spotlight: Vice President J.D. Vance. With the entire war powers debate hanging by a thread, he marched onto the Senate floor and cast the tie-breaking vote that saved Trump's Venezuela campaign. But here's what matters most. Trump didn't win because of unity. He didn't win because Republicans rallied for him. He didn't win because the party believes in his Venezuela strategy. He won because of a tiebreaker. One vote, one bodyguard in the form of the vice president, one razor-thin margin between survival and the biggest humiliation of his second term. Political analysts say this is the closest Trump has ever come to losing control of his own party on a major foreign policy issue. In the Senate, his own Senate, he nearly watched a bipartisan majority place formal limits on his military authority. That hasn't happened to a sitting president in decades. And the reason it almost did? Venezuela. Trump's Venezuela operation has been controversial from the start. He launched strikes without congressional authorization. He captured Nicolas Maduro. He spoke publicly about treating Venezuela like a U.S.-controlled territory. And he made these moves without the checks Congress is required, by the Constitution, to provide. Even some Republicans who normally support him privately conceded this went too far, too fast, with too few guardrails. Polls show voters across the country, Democrats, independents, even many Republicans, don't want a long, open-ended U.S. operation in Latin America. They don't want troops caught abroad. They don't want another conflict draining money and attention from domestic issues. And senators feel that pressure. Some of the Republicans who voted against Trump are from states where war fatigue is real, where constituents are sending a clear message: no more foreign entanglements. That's why this moment matters so much. Because once members of a president's own party feel comfortable breaking away on something as core as war powers, it means the wall of loyalty is weakening. And once that wall weakens, there's no guarantee it will hold the next time, or the time after that. And here's what should genuinely worry Trump. The three Republicans who stood firm against him, Paul, Collins, and Murkowski, did it twice. They didn't crack under pressure. They didn't bend when Trump attacked them publicly. They didn't move even when the entire machinery of the White House leaned on them. That sends a message to every other GOP senator. You can vote against Trump and survive. And that message is devastating for a president who governs through intimidation. But the danger grows even more when you look at the political calendar, because November 2026 is approaching, and if Democrats flip even 1 or 2 Senate seats, Trump loses his majority. That means Trump's survival won't depend on a tiebreaker. It'll depend on persuading swing state Democrats or the very Republicans who already proved they're willing to revolt. Imagine a Senate where Democrats have 51 or 52 seats. Suddenly, Trump doesn't need to worry about 5 GOP defectors. He only needs to worry about 2 or 1. And based on these votes, we already know who those potential defectors are: Paul, Collins, Murkowski, and under certain pressures, maybe Hawley and Young. That's all it takes to derail appointments, to block budget priorities, to restrict executive actions, to challenge foreign operations, even to move forward on impeachment-related inquiries if something significant happens in Venezuela. Because here's the truth. This wasn't just about war powers. It was about the Senate testing Trump's strength. And what they found was a president who's more vulnerable than he lets on, surviving on arm-twisting and last-minute deals instead of genuine loyalty. The Venezuela mission isn't helping him either. If casualties occur, or if the operation expands, or if new controversies surface, that pressure on Republican senators will only increase. Constituents will demand accountability. Democrats will push for more votes. And Republicans who are already uneasy may decide they're not willing to carry the political burden of supporting a deeply unpopular foreign conflict. Some analysts believe this vote could mark the beginning of a broader GOP realignment, subtle, quiet, but significant. A moment where senators start prioritizing their states, their reputations, and the Constitution over Trump's demands. A moment where Trump's dominance becomes less absolute, more contested, more fragile. And the way Trump responded, the anger, the public threats, the pressure campaign, may accelerate that shift. Because when you attack members of your own party, when you burn political bridges in a moment of panic, those bridges rarely get rebuilt. The senators he blasted now have no incentive to help him later. If anything, they may feel freer to oppose him again. This wasn't a one-off moment. It was the first real test of Trump's grip on the Senate in his second term. And the result was alarming for him. A majority voted against him once, and he only survived the second vote because of a tiebreaker. That is not strength. That is not stability. That is not control. That is a president balancing on a knife's edge, depending on last-second rescues to survive challenges from his own party. And as more Republicans become willing to defy him, as Democrats prepare for 2026, and as the Venezuela conflict continues to evolve, the question hanging over Washington is simple. What happens the next time Trump pushes his authority too far? Because today, it was Venezuela. Tomorrow, it could be something bigger. And the senators who broke with him once may not hesitate to do it again. If you want breakdowns like this, the real story behind the headlines, explained clearly and without the filter, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. The political landscape is shifting fast, and what comes next might be even more explosive.